Welcome to today's Sunset Safari. My name is Brent Leo Smith. We have Tebs on camera, and that is a herd of elephants resting in the shade. We have James and Andrew on foot, and we have Lou and Jerry in final control. So not uncommon to find elephants just resting, or very restless if you're a young Ellie bull like the one right in the middle. And I'm hoping that these guys don't look like they've been to the gym or waterhole just yet. So I'm hoping they're going to move through towards there. I can't see any distinct wet patches on them at the moment. So the rest of the herd is spread out in other shade around us. These guys just enjoying the shade of a large marula tree. So the three young ones on the left, a little bit more restless than the adult, who's quite content to just sit or stand quietly, occasionally lifting her trunk to give us a sniff. And a little boisterousness to the left. Sniffy, sniffy. So Lucy, who's in South Bend, Indiana, he was watching the dam cam before the start of the show. Just watch this little one on the right there. It's going to throw dust. Oh, yeah, it's throwing dust. Said there was an elephant who didn't want to share water with the others. What's my thoughts? Well, it's probably an Ellie bull, and that's not that uncommon. I've seen that all over the place, especially when water gets short while an Ellie bull is drinking. He doesn't like to be disturbed quite often, will chase other elephants and other animals away. So guys, I'm on the northern side of the riverbed that flows from the Djuma Dam. So there could be other elephants that arrive. So please, guys watching the dam cam, keep me updated in case there's another herd that comes to drink before these guys do. So behind these, they're just chilling in the shade. You can see a few bums, and some of them are feeding. I'm sure you can hear the branches breaking in the background. Isn't that cute? Using the smaller one as a leaning post. Isn't this just sweet? Well, a good morning or good evening to you, smart redhead who says she loves to start her day with big and small Ellies. We do too here. Oh, look at that. There's a little bit of bullying going on. Not really, just a little bit of playing. And it's very seldom you see an adult go down to the knees, but quite common with the little ones while they're messing around. So even though most of the other elephants are keeping quite still in this hot day, the little Ellies are still playing, not with quite the boisterousness as it would be if it was cooler, but yet they still just can't help themselves. And it's amazing that when they are like this in the shade, there's almost just a moment when one of the adult females decides time to go, and they go from static like this to on the move in a very short time. So Sandy in Tennessee is wondering about how an elephant rests its trunk. She says it's very interesting. Well, Sandy, it's the same as if you had to lean your elbow on something when it was a bit tired. I think it's just more of a comfort thing. There's no real thought process behind it. It's just something to rest the trunk on. Oh, we've got a curious one coming a little bit closer. Bit bored of behaving in the shade. And there we go. It looks like it's just like that. Look at that. All of a sudden, it's time to move. Now the adult moves. Now let's see if these three hooligans join her, or maybe she's just decided she's a bit peckish. I'm quite sure the three hooligans are going to join her. Three down, two left in the shade. One on the right had a bit of an itchy ear, having a scratch there. So all these eddies, despite from the drought, look perfectly normal and healthy for this time of the year. Yes, apart from being a little bit jiggy. So if you look at the spine, sticking out on the one on the right, it's just a bit older, and if we look at any adult elephant, it looks almost exactly the same. That high ridge off the back legs always sticks out. So if we go across to the right, Tebs, oh sorry, left, my bad, behind the little guy, behind the bush, so there we go, there's one there. We can see that high ridge off the back. And even if we look at the adults again, that high ridge on the rump of an elephant is quite common. There we go. Have a look. You can just see those tusks popping out. And Kat in Florida. So she should know this. She has been watching for a while, but what age do Ellie tusks pop out? So they lose their milk tusks just before a year, and those tusks coming out like that, they start just appearing at about a year. This little guy is just probably about a year and a half old now. So I'm going to move around. These Ellies are going to move into the drainage line. I'm going to go see if there's more Ellies heading towards the Juma Dam or the Gallagher. I will check Gallagher first, then back towards Juma. But while we do that, let's go across to James and Andrew, who are on Shank's pony.
3. Well, everybody, we're hoping desperately that this is a SafariLIVE first. We are broadcasting to you from the boughs of a weeping boorbean tree, most of which is falling down around us. Andrew, you can see, is with me in the boughs of this great tree. We're sitting on a termite mound, and it is just the most perfect place to spend an afternoon. Don't worry, we won't broadcast the entire afternoon from up here. My name is James Hendry, in case you're wondering. My parents are both vervet monkeys. And on camera today we have Andrew Joe Francis branded completely in National Geographic wild stuff. That is excellent stuff, because that of course is who makes this possible for us. So we're now looking out west. If you look through the gap afforded by these two branches, you can see the foothills of the Drakensberg, way in the distance, the actual escarpment itself rising up out of the Lowveld Plain, out of the granite plains. And you can see you will know some of the famous lodges around this place, and one of those names, of course, is Ulusaba. And sitting, that's Richard Branson's place, and that's perched on one of those hills there. I'm not sure exactly which one. And beyond that, you might see the twinkling of it's a human settlement, and that's an enormous, well, it's quite a huge number of people that live there. On the borders of the Kruger National Park. That's the borders, western fringes of the greater Kruger National Park. And living there are the Shangani people, who have lived in this area for a few hundred years now. You can see a lot of haze, I'm sure. It's quite hazy. The wind has kept on blowing since yesterday, a strange sort of southerly wind that brought in a few most perfect puffy clouds this morning. Those have blown away, but it's kept the temperature down. It's only been probably about 31 to 32 degrees Celsius here, and in the context of our summer, that's not too bad at all. That's about 85 to 87 degrees Fahrenheit. So very pleasant temperature. And so just a little bit about this tree. It's called a Scotia brachypetala, or weeping boorbean, and it grows often on termite mounds, and that's what it's growing on now. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that. And the bark, which peels off in great swathes, is a very important bark for this time of year. And that, of course, is because tomorrow is the Louise is just saying she's getting vertigo from us pointing down. Tomorrow, of course, is the 31st of December, which is New Year's Eve, and on the 1st of January, some people do wake up with headaches, of course, and should you wake up with a headache born of overconsumption, what you need to do is take some bark from this tree. I, of course, have never had to try this. You take some bark of this tree, you soak it in some water and drink it, and apparently your headache born of overconsumption will disappear immediately. You can send orders through to my Twitter account. I'll send you a kilogram. We'll discuss price in person. The other interesting thing about this tree is the fact that it's called a weeping boorbean, and it weeps. It's called a weeping boorbean because it makes beautiful red flowers that drip nectar, and they drip all the way around the tree in the summertime. I don't know that this tree is going to flower because we've had so little water this year, but normally that's what it does. And then a boorbean, apparently you can use, and this was told to us by one of our viewers in Pretoria, you can use, I didn't know why it was called a boorbean until he told us, and you can use the seed, there's a swallow flying below us because we're so high up, You can use the seed as a coffee substitute, apparently. So that's why it's called a boer bean. And a boer, of course, is a farmer. And so when the farmers were, or the boers were moving up through the country, trying to sort of, the tax evading, they were evading tax from the British who had annexed the place. And basically, because times were tough, there were two interesting things that happened. First was, of course, you developed various survival methods in the bush. So you made coffee out of boer beans and ziziphus trees. And the other interesting culinary sort of throwback to that time is the rusk, of course. And I've discussed the rusk live before. But just for those of you who don't know, a rusk is a delicate, so it's a South African delicacy. In most other parts of the world, it would be considered a weapon. Certainly, you could fire it out of a cannon and do some serious damage to a ship or a wall, or indeed an invading army. But here in South Africa, it is a delicacy, and you dip it in your coffee in the morning, made from a weeping boer bean, and you bite it. And I think that it's a throwback to the Great Trek when the Boers were moving up. They didn't have a great deal of fresh produce. They were, you know, traveling in ox wagons, and basically it's stale, sweet bread with the consistency of concrete unless soaked heavily in your morning weeping boer bean coffee. So that is the rusk, and it was a great joy of my time as a guide to watch guests coming down to tea in the morning and investigating this so-called piece of food. They'd take this piece of thing and look at it and sort of examine it and sort of try it and chip a tooth or two and then knock it against the table, and eventually, so you'd have to go over and say, well, why don't you just try and dip it in your coffee for a while, and then it becomes relatively palatable. I wouldn't call it a delicacy, but it becomes relatively palatable. Now, there was also, I think, a nest in this tree. There's some, sounds like some chicks calling, and I can't see it, and I'm not going to climb around too much more to try and find it, but there were some white-crowned shrikes flying around here, and I mean, it's a little bit late for them still to be in their nest, so they've probably flown out the nest, but this might be the nest, the tree in which they were born. And what a perfect tree to be born in. An incredible view off to the west, and gentle breeze blowing up from the south. And thank you, Cheryl, in Indiana. Your very kind comments saying that Andrew and I are taking you to new heights. We do what we can, and that there's never a dull moment. The camera may go dull if we drop it or if we plummet from the tree, in which case we'll cross immediately to Brent Leo Smith. And then the very last thing I'm going to show you is the leaves, after which we are going to cross to Brent, because I'm running out of things to tell you about in this tree. There is the leaf of the weeping boer bean. And it's what we call a compound leaf, and I think this is quite, well, I mean, to those of you who are sort of botanically minded, it might be quite interesting. That is a complete leaf. All of those things there are a complete leaf, and each of those little things there is called a leaflet. And so it's only split once. The acacias are split twice, and so that's the compound leaf of the weeping boer bean, Scotia brachypetala. Right, I think we're going to hand over to Brent Leo Smith, see what he's doing. Oh, hang on, we've got another comment through. And very nice from Sean Holder in Secunda. Sean, you say lekker dag vir boomklim, and that means a great day for climbing trees. Absolutely it is, Sean. And you're leaving for the Kruger tomorrow. Travel safely. I think that's great stuff. I hope that you have a marvelous time up here. It's a great time of the year to be here. Let's head back across to Brent Leo Smith. Andrew and I will now try to climb down the tree.
So unfortunately nothing at the Gallagher waterhole, so let's go back towards the eddies we were with just now. So beastly hot, 30 degrees, but with this, not a cloud in the sky and this gusting wind. It's also a very dry wind. It almost feels like the beginning of winter, quite chilly this morning. So no rain for the foreseeable future in my opinion. But I could be wrong. Two things one should never predict: the weather and a woman's moods. Alan in London is wondering, will we be having a broadcast on New Year's Day? Alan, there's no rest for the wicked, so yes, we shall. I shall not. It shall be James and Jamie on New Year's morning. Andrew and I will be setting off to Johannesburg, where we plan to trade the low fault of South Africa for the low fault of Zimbabwe for a couple of days. Mom and baby moving across the quarantine clearings, heading for some shade. There's mom, there's the little one. They're not allowed to go there. That is a no entry area. That is of course the road to our staff camp, the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, also known as the Juma Research Camp. Now off they go. Let's go see if we can catch up with those elephants again. Good afternoon to Jan van Rensburg. Jan says he's often quite scared to go close to elephants in a car. I was wondering what sort of danger signs should he look for. Well, Jan, the most important thing is if you are nervous around the animals, you should probably stay a bit of a distance away. And where you feel comfortable, don't ever feel the need to go too close if you're not comfortable. That's the most important rule. There's a lot of elephants give you a lot of signs that whether they're safe to approach or not, or even while you close them that you should move off or not. And the big mistake that most people make is they move when they should stay still, or they stay still when they should move. And of course, every situation varies incredibly from the other, but generally, easy signs to see that an elephant's agitated. Lifting their head isn't actually a good one. It is just sort of telling you it's there. But watch their tails. If their tails start standing up, it's a very good sign the elephants are not happy, and then generally better to stay away. But quite often when you do get into a situation with elephants that could go either way, it is made to go the wrong way by people starting the car and moving. And 99% of those situations, you should switch off your car and keep still. And let the animals move past. They might give you a few warning charges, but and as I said, it's very difficult because every different situation is completely different from the next. There's no hard and fast rules. Hello, little wildly beasts, all resting in the shade. We're going to do the same. We've also got a zebra resting in the shade. There's all the sensible animals having a snooze in the shade, staying out of the hot sun. And this zebra, of course, is not sensible. There's some sensible animals, all the baby wildies. And one of last year's babies, all having a good snooze. I wonder if they're going to be up to their usual antics this evening, using the quarantine clearings as their personal racetrack. Let's go see if we can catch up with those ellies again. Christina in Pittsburgh, who's on Twitter, says she's heard that animals can sense our fear. I don't know if it's as much as sense as read our body language. Not being able to verbally communicate like we can, I'd say a lot of it is reading body language. That's why often when a dog runs up to you very aggressively, a domestic dog, if you don't back away, you immediately put your hand up to its nose for it to smell, it's fine, because you're not behaving like something it can chase. So I'd say it's more reading body language and reactions than it is sensing fear. You must remember, over the years, a lot of us have had many people on the back of our safari vehicles, and a lot of them in the beginning very scared. And if that was the case, all the animals would sense the fear, so to speak, and therefore behave accordingly. But if we drive the vehicle sensibly, etc., and sort of don't give them a reason to chase us or to behave aggressively towards us, they don't. So that's why I don't believe they sense fear. They read that or react to your behavior. Looks like those eddies have moved down towards the drainage line, the riverbed. Good thing I know a shortcut to get there. They might be heading to the deeper shade around the dry riverbed. I was hoping they might be moving back towards the Djuma Pan. I think they might have drunk quite a lot earlier, and that's why I can't see any wet mud on them. And where have these ellies gone? Marisha in Texas is wondering why there was one adult and 3 different aged calves. They can't all be hers, and they're most definitely not. So the rest of the herd was feeding around them, so those 3 calves were definitely not all hers. Hold on, Debs. Oh, we're sliding quite nicely today. See if we can catch up with these ellies down in the Mawati Creek bed. Hopefully they haven't moved too far down here because it gets very thick. Any sign of them up there, Tibbs? Ah, there we go. So, Tom in Dallas thinks that don't people release pheromones when they're afraid? Shouldn't the animals be able to pick this up as well as an elevated heart rate? Well, Tom, if you're an elephant, is there any particular reason why you should pick up on human pheromones? Not really. You'll pick up on other elephants' pheromones. So I think those are definitely more based towards different species rather than as a whole, a general for all species. Well, here we got a nice Ellie bull. Can't see the rest of the herd, but we have a elephant. Okay, young bull, mid-20s, maybe late 20s, playing in the sand in the drainage line. Quite nice to be above elephant, that doesn't happen too often. Looks like he's found some grass or plant I can't see from where I am, but it's still green and down in that little drainage that he's feeding on. Let me just turn around, let's follow him. If you bear with me for a second, this is quite a unique opportunity to use the VR rig. So he's just over there and he's moving, and it's very unusual, as I said, to be in that position, to be above an elephant. Unfortunately, one of our GoPros took just a whack from a branch. Doesn't seem to be turning on at all. Excuse my tap. It's so the editing process is easy and they can sync the audio from this to the GoPros. Oh no, I need to switch the car off, I always forget that. Enough, Kev? One more? Good? So it is incredible to have an elephant bull in a drainage line or a creek bed where we are able to get a slightly different perspective, sometimes above at least eye level. So there's the Ellie there, we're just going to sneak forward. And hopefully it's going to be amazing that we're going to be able to show people a 360-degree view. So we won't only be looking from this camera with Ted in the future. Imagine you'll be able to, if I point over there, have a look over there. You can have a look behind Ted's, to the right, to the left. There he is, just slowly moving down. Ah, I see what he's after. So he's in the bottom of this dry riverbed, and there's still obviously a little bit of moisture, and he's feeding on some sedges that are still green. So he's literally walking up, munching sedges. Incredible animal. I said, okay, maybe a little bit older than I first thought, maybe around 30 years old. An adult elephant bull. And I'm hoping if he stays the course he's on at the moment, he's going to head towards the waterhole. And if it is a bull, he might give Pete the pond hippo a bit of a hard time. Let's move forward a little bit again. Well, you can't really blame the animals for giving Pete the pond hippo a hard time after he's befouled the water. You good, Tibsy? So Mary in Missouri wondering if there could be water down there in that drainage line. I'm sure there is, Mary. You'd have to dig quite long and hard, and the fact that the elephants are not digging down there yet means it's probably a bit too deep. It's okay, big boy. It looks like he's going to walk through this gap to my left, right past us in the creek bed. Oh, he's having a stop for a sedge snack. So sedges only grow where there's underground water, and I think the sedges are green here is from that little bit of rain we did have. There would have been a few little pools for a few days, which prompted their very quick growth. So if he continues this way, we're going to get another very interesting elephant perspective, and it'll be from directly behind him. Sean is wondering, are elephant populations still shrinking in Africa? Well, Sean, in South Africa, the elephant population is quite stable at the moment and actually increasing. But other places in Africa, particularly Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Congo, the elephants are under serious threat. Tanzania in particular, Tanzania used to have the second largest elephant population in Africa. And it was estimated around 130 to 150,000 animals, second only to northern Botswana. And in a very short time, that population is probably only around 20, 25,000 now. And one of the biggest problems with Tanzania is that corruption is quite bad there, so it is a hub of ivory smuggling. Although there's a new president at the moment who seems to have cleaned that up quite a lot, so hopefully the future will be a bit better. You can see it's just moving from little pocket of sedge to pocket of sedge. It's amazing how dexterous their trunks are. And you're picking up such tiny little pieces occasionally and piling piling them into his mouth. Oh, he doesn't like wild basil because he skipped over the basil and carried on going. Nope, he skipped over the basil again. So there you go. Elephants are not fans of Onychum canum or wild basil. I do love spending time with these Ellie balls. I can't see whether he's actually feeding on the Timbuti tree. No, it looks like he's feeding on the little grivia or raisin bush beyond the Timbuti tree. So if he was feeding on the Timbuti tree, that would be slightly unusual. Elephants, giraffe, black rhino, baboon and kudu sometimes feed on Timbuti when they've got a bit of a bad stomach or bad parasite infection in their stomachs. And it purges their system. The milky latex of the Timbuti tree is highly noxious. He is feeding on the raisin bush. So we're going to wait for him to head closer towards the Juma waterhole. While we do that, let's go have a look what James and Andrew are up to on foot.
3. Right, everyone, welcome back to the Bushwalk, and you are in a forest of Meirua parvifolia, or the bush dwarf bush cherry, a completely uninteresting tree, but for the fact that the first time I saw it was this morning, and here it is again. Now we're standing on a termite mound, and I, like our ancient ancestors, or the animals with whom we share an ancient ancestor, the chimpanzee, am fishing for termites. I did manage to catch one earlier, and there is a termite. Now if I was a chimpanzee, I would eat it. And smart redhead, you wanted to know if these mounds are indeed still used by termites. There's your answer. This mound is absolutely live. There are millions of these termites underneath there. Andrew told me that I should try and eat this termite, of course, which is what our ancestors did. It's what the chimpanzees do. It's what a lot of people still do around here. They've got a very fatty substance in their abdomen, which is very good for energy production, of course. I was tempted to eat it. I then felt sorry for the termite, so I'm not going to eat it at all. The other reason I'm not going to eat it is that you can see, I'm not sure, it's got some very severe pincers on the front of it. Its mouth parts are very sharp, and they will draw blood, and I will probably then hardly be able to talk to you for the rest of the drive. And that's a little soldier termite who's grabbed onto the edge of this grass in order to defend his kith and kin from the machinations of whatever was trying to attack them, in this case us. Right. We'll drop him back in there. See? No harm done, everybody. I would say that this termite mound, I'm just going to leave Andrew up there for a second. This termite mound, in extent, goes from probably around here. Okay? Now I'm going to walk all the way around it, give you an idea of how enormous it is. I'd say it probably made at about, say, what did we say this morning? 4.5 square or cubic feet of soil a year are made here. And you can imagine, therefore, how enormous this mound is and how long it took them to build. And so now I'm coming round to the edge of it here. And this mound, I think, probably would have taken close to between I mean, if you think of it at sort of 4.5 cubic feet of soil a year, I think we're looking at closer than 50 to 75 years for a mound this size. And so I mean, it's the proverbial tip of the tip of the iceberg here on the top, and at least the same again, probably 5 or 6 times the same again underneath the ground, and often going all the way to the water table. So that is the great fungus-growing termite, Macrotermes natalensis. So let's put this one at about 50 to 75 years old, and that's what I'd say. And it could have been recolonized before. At least again, it could have been, I mean, it would have started off with just 2 termites, a king and a queen, and she would have started laying eggs, about 20,000 of them a day, and then it may have gone dormant. When the queen dies, the mound will go dormant, and then it could have been recolonized, say, I mean, millions and millions of those alates go flying up into the sky after the first rains every year. And they could well have landed here and just recolonized it. So a magnificent piece of architecture out here, and a source of great amusement to me always. Come this way. We're heading towards Treehouse Dam at this stage, and we're hoping to find something there. There's a little puddle of water there, and perhaps there will be a warthog or 2 lurking about the place. Ooh, let's have a look here, Andrew. We've got, what do you think's going on here? This is a midden site. And this midden site is a wildebeest. Now here's a classic wildebeest track. There we go, around the right size, and you can see quite square, not nearly as round as something like a kudu's. And then this is the dung. And I think this is, it's quite interesting. It's obviously a well-used site, but it hasn't been used since the last rains. You can still see that. And I mean, we last had a dribble of rain, I think about a week ago, but it was a very small dribble of rain. But the wildebeest has come and walked over this area again. So clearly he does use this area. This would have been a bull that uses this as a midden site. Probably not particularly enthusiastic at this time of year because all the cows are giving birth, which means that none of them are particularly interested in what he has to offer them at this stage of the game. And then a question from Ontario about how many different kinds of giraffe we get here. I'm just going to show you this dung, which is relatively fresh. We get Valure in Ontario. We only get one kind of giraffe in southern Africa. They reckon there are probably 9 to 11 subspecies of giraffe, but there's only one of them here in South Africa, and that's called the southern giraffe. Here we go. This is a ruminant, of course, and you can see how very, very finely chewed this dung is. Also a grazer, no little pieces of leaves at all, just grass, and that's the wildebeest. A much maligned, highly underrated, very magnificent animal. Right, from this magnificent animal's dung, let's go across to Brent's magnificent animal. Brent is also a magnificent animal himself, actually. So 2 magnificent animals for you. We're going to carry on walking towards Treehouse Dam. See you shortly.
So we're still with this Ellie bull, and he's still making use of all the sedges and greenery around this little drainage line. Oh, becomes a bigger drainage line downstream, the Mwati. So we're just below the Djuma Dam wall. And I'm hoping he's slowly mobile towards the water. Could be quite fun to see him interacting with Pete, the pond hippo. There you go. You can see how he shifts his trunk from side to side, sniffing out the good green bits. Very relaxed bull. What a wonderful way to spend the afternoon, but relaxing with a big Ellie bull. As you can see, Quite nice and cool down here at the bottom of the Mawati. Quite a lot of shade, and if you're that early, enough greenery to keep you interested. Well, Shell is commenting that I say basil and she says basil. Shell, I must remind you that the English language was invented in England, and basil is very much an Americanism of the English word basil. So I'm going to stick with basil, but you're more than welcome to stick with basil. I do, however, think you might be incorrect, and I've got a feeling James is also going to agree with me on that one. Was the Queen's, after all. Very interesting language, English. And of course, English has developed into some incredible accents in the different colonies. If you look at America and New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, all very distinct, almost accents, now even dialects with very special words that have snuck in. Billy in Cedar Hill would like to know, would this elephant know his own progeny if he encountered them? And would he treat them differently from other young elephants? Billy, I can't be 100% sure on that answer, but I don't think so. These bulls will mate with multiple females from multiple herds over a large area. So I feel it is unlikely that he'll be able to recognize his own progeny. And quite often, most Ellie bulls treat young elephants all with a little bit of disdain and a little bit of irritation. That is why unless they are looking to mate, and they are must, they tend to spend their time a little bit apart from the breeding herds of females. And led a more peaceful existence away from the hustle and bustle of the large breeding herds. They're quite often found not far from the breeding herds like this, but still a little bit away. Sometimes we will get interaction with bulls and females around waterholes, specifically at a very dry time like this. But the bulls will dominate those waterholes. Jacqueline in Georgia would like to know if I've ever seen two bull elephants fight for the right to breed, and could I describe it a little bit? Jacqueline, it is an incredibly loud affair. It's almost like the earth is thundering, and it is very, very aggressive. And they go from gentle giants to maniacal demons when they fight for mating rights. And it is a very impressive an epic battle. And you can imagine two animals of about 6 tons each running at each other at about 25 miles per hour, and the incredible force of that collision. That's how often, when you look at big elephant bulls, that's how their tusks are broken. It'll be from those massive collisions fighting over breeding females, or the right to breed with females in estrus. He is still slowly making his way towards the Juma waterhole, but he is taking his sweet time. enjoying the succulents, or what succulents are left here in this riverbed. Try a little bit, get a little bit closer. You can see what he's feeding on. So Steve Blake is wondering what are the devices attached to the front left of our vehicle, and there's also a fluffy thing on my dashboard. That is a virtual reality rig. It is a group of 7 pictures that are simultaneously, I think, taking pictures, time-lapse, Tibbs?
Video.
It's video, right? They're simultaneously videoing a 360-degree view around, and then this microphone is recording, and then they will sync it up somehow. That is above and beyond me. And what it is to try, it's a new technology. I think it's called Ocular Rift, if I remember correctly. So you would be able to wear a helmet and go on safari, and then wherever you turned your head, you would turn to where one of those cameras had filmed. And obviously it's quite new technology and still very much in the testing phases, and that's what we're doing at the moment. We're testing it, hopefully to try perfect it. And see if it has a viable use out here on the live safaris. So he's popped up to where we can't. I need to try to find a way to stay with him. So I think we're going to have to do some maneuvering through these thickets. So while we do that, and to catch up with that Ellie, let's go back across to James and Andrew and see what they're up
to. Right, we are just wandering down now quietly. We're about to go into some thicker stuff here, and there are buffalo tracks all over the place. I say that now, and of course there are no buffalo tracks. Here we go, here's one here, Andrew. There's a beefalo track there. That's an old one, roughly the same age as some of the dinosaur tracks you'd find around the place. That's a joke. And so we're going into some thicker stuff now, down towards Treehouse Dam, where there's not a lot of water, of course. There's a small puddle, but that does mean that we need to walk a bit more carefully, a bit more slowly, a bit more quietly, listening. Our ears, of course, are one of our most valuable senses out here when we're on foot. Our eyes are great, of course. We've got good eyes, not as good as some of the animals out here. Oh dear. Andrew just got an enormous piece of knobthorn stuck in his knee, but he just pulled it out. He's now bleeding profusely, of course, but don't worry about the cameraman, they must just suffer it. So we're walking gently down towards Treehouse Dam, like I said, and I've lost my train of thought completely now. I was just talking about being quiet and going through these sort of thick areas, especially down to the water on a warm afternoon, just keeping very carefully aware, listening. That's what I was talking about. I've got it now. Looking. Our eyes are good, but also our most underrated sense is our sense of smell. We smell very well, and you can develop a sense of smell far more than you think you can, especially if you're a non-smoker. Smokers, I think, don't smell nearly as well as those of us who have yet to, let's just say, those of us who find it a socially less than acceptable practice. Come this way, Andrew. And especially, I find that when I've been in a city for a long time, my ability to smell is definitely reduced. Right now, being out here for a while, my sense of smell becomes a lot more subtle, because the sense out here is just that much more subtle. So we don't have big blinding or big overwhelming smells here. So you'll smell the subtle smell of of a waterbuck as you're walking through the bush, maybe some fresh elephant dung blowing in on the breeze. And it's something to be very, very aware of. We have tremendously sensitive noses. Okay, so now, as we walk down here, you can see that the bush is getting much thicker, and that thick bush is just homing in on the drainage line or the dry stream that eventually will feed into Treehouse Dam, and that stream eventually feeds into the Mulwati, which of course is the major drainage line that runs through Djuma. So we're very carefully listening, smelling, and most importantly, just enjoying the feel of being in the wild out here. Andrew, watch your aerial over there. I shall move this stick for you. I do what I can, you know. Right, done. Now smart redhead, there's a very smart comment you've made. You've said, have I opted for the bushwalk to avoid driving rusty this morning? I did initially. Actually Andrew did, because he didn't want his vertebra compacted. But mercifully, Opar, the resident mechanic, he's called Grandfather, that's what his name means. He's about 28, I think. And he is our mechanic, and he changed the shock absorbers on Rusty, and she is like driving a gondola through the canals of Venice now. So, no, we're just walking because it's nice to walk. Can you get through here, Andrew? There we go. Some very deeply ancient elephant dung there, and you can see that it's very pale. And that, what season do you think that was deposited in, everyone? Andrew, you can be everyone for the moment. When do you think that was deposited? How can you tell what season it was deposited in?
There's a lot of grass, so I would say...
I would say the winter, and I'd say the winter simply because there are no dung beetles in the winter time, and so it hasn't been split apart. So if you look in here, there we go. Lots of sticks, not so much grass. And of course, if you find fresh dung in the summer, normally it's been split apart by dung beetles, so I would say this was winter. Andrew, you get 0 out of 10. Let's go across to Brent. He's losing sight of that elephant. Probably not the same one that made this. This one is very old by now. Let's go across to Brent. We'll keep going towards Treehouse Dam. See you shortly.
So this Ellie bull has moved into a thicket, and he's busy munching away happily. We are very close to the Djuma waterhole, even though the visuals might not be great at the moment. What do you guys think we should do? Should we stay or should we go? Send your answers through to questions@wildearth.tv or use the hashtag SafariLIVE on Twitter. Should we play the patience game while the elephant is in the thickets? Or should we move on and see what else we can find? And as I often say, the most important thing in getting the great sightings is patience. The most important arsenal in your weapon when getting those incredible sightings, and it looks like he might move out of the thicket. However, we are on the other side of the thicket, so let's see if we can do the same. Mary in Missouri would like to know, could this elephant possibly dig down in that sandy spot down there in the drainage to get to the water like we've seen in other areas? Well, Mary, I think the water table here might be a little bit lower. So it's possibly you might not be able to. Watch out there, Teddy. We're not as mobile through the thickets as the elephants are, unfortunately. But I think when belly out. Good. Oh, lost my jersey. In that particular section, you've got a very nice soil type for that type of digging. It's called a duplex soil. So a duplex soil is sandy soil on top of clay. So the clay acts as a sealant. So the water's not that deep, but I think here you'd have to dig quite far before you hit that clay level. So I think the Ellies, also knowing that the Djuma water hole is close, they don't need to dig there, and also it would require a lot of effort, so you probably find they think it's worthwhile not digging out this area. If we had had a bit more rain and the water table was a bit higher, then they probably might. So the Djuma water hole is probably 150 meters behind me, and Ellie's just in these quarry thickets here. See if we can get a visual from here. Should be a little bit further. I can hear him breaking branches. Give him a little bit to come out of this thicket. I'm just going to go on a quick loop of quarantine, and hopefully by the time we come back he's worked his way through here. Oh, there he is. Just on the edges of the quarry thicket. Look at his back legs. It's just, he just stepped over the fallen knobthorn. Can't see what tree he's feeding on at the moment, but it does look like a quarry. Miss Cat in Green Bay is saying, is it true that elephants die of tooth decay? So that their back teeth wear down and that is how they expire. Well, almost right. So elephant only get a certain number of teeth during their life. They get 6 sets. And it's not so much decay as wear. They literally wear them down, and they do often die of starvation. Hoping one of my books might have a picture of an elephant's. Well, when we say teeth, it's more of a large tooth, a single tooth, but it's very big. And the only other teeth they have are their tusks. Okay, unfortunately, no pictures of the teeth. a warm SafariLIVE afternoon welcome to Sean in Secunda, who's actually on his way to the Kruger National Park tomorrow. Now, you're going to enjoy that, Sean. This dry weather will provide you with some incredible game viewing. And Sean is asking whether the best times to see all the predators are the times we head out on safari. Sean, yes and no. So in the mornings, definitely, if I was you, I would be the first person out of the Kruger gate. Sean, let me know what part of Kruger you're going to, and I'll let you know what areas are best to check for which predators. Here he comes. Hello, big boy. I do definitely feel a special bond with Ellie's. One of the animals I've spent an incredible amount of time with over the years. On foot, yes, you're so big. On vehicle, from boat. Right behind us. Coming to say hello to Tebs. Where are you off to, mister? The water's that way. Huh? So I said it did look like he had a drink earlier. I was hoping sometimes the Eddie Bulls will come back for more. It doesn't look like he's going to. He's going to keep moving. It's incredible how an animal that big can be that quiet when not feeding. Just the softest touch of a pad. So back to Sean's question while we reposition. So Sean, in the early mornings, as I said, I would be the first person out of the gates in the morning. So I'm not sure. I think Kruger Park time gate opens at 4:30 or 5. Well, whatever it is, that's the time you should go. You should be the front of the queue to get out. That's when you go most likely to see the most active predators. It's not to say you're not going to see predators during the rest of the day, but they're more than likely going to be fast asleep. And depending on what part of the park you are, there's certain areas you should focus on, especially with it being so dry at the moment. So just let me know which camps you're staying at, and I'll try and lend a bit of advice to what areas you should work and at what times of the day. A lot of people go to Kruger National Park, drive themselves around and don't see very much. Just a few, probably a month or so, or just over a month or so ago, Jamie and I went with friends of ours to the Kruger for 2 nights, and we always see good elephant up in the north, but by knowing where to be at the right time of the day, we saw 4 or 5 different leopards in 2 nights in the Kruger, where we can't off-road and we can't track. So if you can't off-road and can't track, you really have to try and be in the right position, the right place at the right time of the day to increase your chances of seeing predators. So while we spend a bit more time with this beautiful Ellie, James has made his way towards the treehouse waterhole, which we were talking about just now. So let's see what's out and about there.
Finishing. Right, we are live, and there is a zebra, also very much alive. We've arrived at Treehouse Dam, where there is about as much water as you'd find in a large piece of Sahara desert sand, but there is also a beautiful zebra there, and I'm going to try and sneak a bit forward closer to see if we can have a look at him. So, first thing to do is check the wind with my sock, which my friend gave me to go to his wedding, but I lost the other one, so I thought to contribute to him it would make a very good ash bag. So the wind is blowing perfectly in our favour. A zebra has a good nose, it has a very good sense of hearing, and also very good sight. So we're going to try and sneak up on him from behind. So he won't smell us, but he will see us if we make a noise, and he'll certainly hear us if we make a noise, of course. There are some squirrels alarm calling off to the right hand side there. It won't be at us, but the zebra will be very aware of the squirrels alarming, and I suspect probably interpret the sound more competently than we can. So if the squirrel was, say, shouting about a leopard, I suspect that or a lion, I suspect that the zebra would know the difference between that and perhaps a snake. Now he's turning slightly towards us. I'm just going to keep an eye out for the rest of the herd. Now with the wind blowing, of course, we're playing kind of predator here. This is perfect for the predators because we can kind of walk. We're not that silent when we're walking. Andrew wears a size 15 boot. He's also carrying an enormous pack on his back, so it's difficult for him to walk quietly. But we're going to sneak a little bit closer, but because of the wind, he can't hear us. Now imagine you were a lion creeping through the bush here. Your tawny flanks, you'd go down into a crouch here, your shoulders sticking out. You'd probably use the cover here, so we can still see him, but he doesn't know we're here. And you'd sneak, and you'd be looking around all the time, just checking to see if there isn't another member of the herd waiting to alarm call at you. Now we'd stop because he's turned. We'd stop completely. There's an impala we can hear up there. No, it's moving behind cover. Now if we were a lion, we'd move quickly again to the next piece of cover. Now I've made a noise by crunching a leaf, so I'm going to freeze. And I can see a kudu watching us now. Now if I was a lion, that kudu would be going bah, bah, it would be barking. Can you see it, Andrew? Come around here, you'll see it. And the zebra. I can't see if the zebra's turned to face us or not. I think it has. Is it facing us, Andrew? I think it is. I think he's facing us. So he heard me crunch those bushes there. Now, obviously a lion's foot wouldn't be crunching on the bushes. Yeah, the zebra's well aware of us now. Now he's looking. Let's continue to act like a predator, and that's what will happen. You see. Now if we show ourselves, that's wonderful. If we'd showed ourselves as soon as he saw us, there are more zebra there now, 3 of them. If we'd showed ourselves, he probably would have moved off, but much less panicked. But you saw the way he froze, pricked his ears up, smelt the wind, tried to see what it was that was creeping behind the bush. And the kudu, did you see the kudu, Andrew? No. You can see it there now. She's not worried about us at all. She's just running off there. That was wonderful. Now Shell, in Detroit, you worried about zebra. I have said that they're quite nasty before, and you said, are we not worried that it might charge? Shell, no. Not when we're on foot like this. They're watching us. It's highly, highly unlikely, far less likely than if it was, say, a buffalo, but even a buffalo wouldn't. charge at this distance. They'd be far more likely to move away. Right, so now let's dispense with our lion act, because obviously they've seen us, and if we were lions, we'd move off into the bush. Now we're just going to walk out into the open and stop behaving like predators. Unfortunately, we're going to have to watch a game drive go past first. That's okay. Not ideal when you're on foot, of course, but that's just the way it is. So what a lion would have done then, once it's discovered, they stand up, they give up, and they probably slink off somewhere else. But if they're clever and they're hunting in a pride, of course, the one that's been spotted will stand up and wait, and others will go round and then chase the zebra towards the one that's been seen. That's the idea anyway. Okay, now let's try and continue with this thing. The zebra have gone up through here. There's nothing at the dam. But let's have a quick look at the amount of water that's here. Then we'll walk back up through that block, and Shell, you'll see that all these zebras have moved off. No animal out here is going to attack you or charge you if there's any, if they can't move away from you. Right, but Brent is still with his elephant, but let's just quickly have a look at the water here, and then we'll head up back towards the zebra. I can still see them up through there. But you can see this is a very dry area. Not much going on here, but the elephants have dug. Oh, there was a dove in here. The elephants have dug to water. This is all because of elephants here. You can see it's been dug away. And I think it's elephants and it's animals that have come and used this as a wallow. But this is underground water. This is not remnants of the dam. This is from underground flowing water, and you can see it's actually relatively clear. There's a patch here that you can see it in here. This is not sort of the same clay that you find at the bottom of Buffelshoek Dam, for example. This is genuine water that is flowing underground. So were you to come and sink a borehole somewhere around here, if you were going to have a camp or settle down for a little while, an extended period, this would be a good place to dig a borehole. And the elephants, of course, can feel this water moving under the ground, and that's why they know where to dig. They're excellent natural water diviners. Okay, we're going to head back out towards the zebra that way. We'll hand you back to Brent and his elephant and see you in just a little while.
So we're still with this wonderful Eddie bull. I'm still hoping he might go towards the water, but at the moment he's having a good feed just below my house. So moving quite slowly through the bush, stopping to feed on anything that takes his fancy. Like that little bush willow. No, he decided, no, he didn't want that. Just testing whether it was worth having a munch out of. Sean from Secunda, who's going to the Kruger, is going through the southern parts of the park. Hello, big boy. Well, Sean, you're going to see a lot of elephants. And he said you're coming in from Komatipoort, then you should definitely maximize, especially in the early morning, late afternoon, that riverine frontage on the Crocodile River. Go slowly, but if you're out there early, a lot of the dominant leopards in that area utilize the roads that run parallel to the river as highways, and the same for Skakuza and Lower Sabi. Also, when you're around Skakuza, be sure to check the Sand River. Very, very good leopard country, and also you get a few leopards that are Sabi Sands leopards that meander that far. Their territory falls both in Mala Mala and the Kruger National Park, specifically the males. Now, as we head up towards the more central regions around Satara, That is an area I know very, very well, and I was actually there when it was very, very dry back in 2003, 4, somewhere around there, at Singita Lubombo. And the whole Wanetsi, or S100, Kamana Dam, all very good for lion and leopards, but you must remember they're going to be after the buffalo and wildebeest at this time of the year. So the Kruger have closed a lot of their water holes, so I'm not sure which ones are still open. But anywhere that's still got water, the whole Timbavati River area, also very, very good. Accessible from the Aupen Road or towards Aupen Gate from Satara. And that is one of the areas where we saw a few of those leopards when Jamie and I went a month or so ago. But Crocodile Bridge, really good for cheetah. I saw really nice cheetah the last time I was down in the southern end of the park. And of course, Lower Sabi to Skakuza along the Sabi River for leopards and the Sand River. But also, while you're around Satara, keep a big lookout for the white lion cubs of the Shishangan Pride. I know they were seen actually as recently as yesterday outside of the Singita concession on the Wanetsi Road. Beth in Boston would like to know what is my favorite part of Kruger. Beth, for me, it has to be the north and the central regions. I'm very fortunate that I've spent quite a lot of time in Kruger, away from the beaten track, so off the main roads and outside of the main camps. So I would have to say the Wanetsi area in central Kruger along the Mozambique boundary. There's an incredible drainage system in there called the Shinkelingan in the Singita Lubombo concession. That is an amazing, amazing place. So you've got the Lubombo Mountains that look down onto the big basalt plains, and when it's wet, it's inundated with wildebeest and zebra. It's also got one of the highest lion populations in Africa, that whole eastern Kruger area. And then next would probably be, it's a tough toss-up, but between the Letaba area, but I'd say a close second to Singita would have to be the Lavuvu River area, the Pafuri area, right in the north of the Kruger Park, at the border of Mozambique and South Africa. It's also an area that's really, really rich in some fun history. There's a spot up there called Crook's Corner. So Crook's Corner was I wouldn't go as far as to call it a den of iniquity, but there were some interesting characters. I think the best word to describe them would be roguish characters. Ivory hunters, smugglers, poachers, and the reason it was named Crook's Corner, it was a very convenient spot if you were slightly on the wrong side of the law. There was a concrete sort of cone that was the border, and if the Mozambique or then Portuguese East African officials came looking for you, you stepped onto the South African side, and if the South Africans came looking for you, you stepped onto either the Mozambican or the Zimbabwean or the Rhodesian side, and vice versa. So they had little lookouts all around there, and as soon as any form of authority from whatever country would come, they would just make sure they were on the other side of the beacon. And that went on for many years. It was one of the only trading depots in the Lowveld at that time. Really, really fascinating, really beautiful area. Huge fever tree forests and great game viewing up there, and incredible birding. Also home to Lana Gorge, one of the most impressive gorges I've ever been to, above as the Lavuvu River flows out of the Soutpansbach, or the last bit of the Soutpansbach Mountains. Also up there's a place called Tulamela, and it is a walled ancient city from probably about the same time period and the same people as the ruins of Great Zimbabwe, and oh my goodness, Mapungubwe, where they found that golden rhino, and they'd been trading with the Arabs that sailed the east coast of Africa for many hundred years before the first Europeans even arrived. And very interesting, along the Limpopo you will find tamarind trees. Some are a couple of 600-700 years old, and they are indigenous to India. And it was one of the favorite sort of traveling sweets or foods for a lot of the Arab traders of that time era. So as they would eat and move, they would drop tamarinds. And on all the major trade caravans from the east coast of Africa to the hinterland, and all the old slaving caravans, you will find tamarind trees from the traders and slavers. Looks quite upset with a lot of the leaves he's trying. So, hello AJ, who's 6 years old and joining us on this sunset safari. AJ, great to have you with us. AJ would like to know, does it hurt an elephant when its tusks start to grow? It does a little bit, and actually, AJ, that's a perfect timing. If you ever look behind the elephant, there's that little bush there, and it's called a terminalia, or a silver cluster leaf, and it's like medicine for baby elephants. When their teeth start hurting, they start eating it, and it numbs that area around there.
I'd like to go to the physical. How many vehicles are there?
Hi, Alan. It's just one of us on VCK. You're welcome to join us. I will be there in about 5 minutes.
It's amazing how watch his trunk move through the ground, sniffing for the good bits and completely passing over certain other ones, and he's got a good bit there. It looks like I couldn't see what it was before he popped in his mouth. See how he moves that tree that was pushed over by elephants much earlier in the year to get to some of the plant species that were protected growing underneath it. So he's twirling his... It's amazing. He twirled his trunk for a single strand of Eragrostis, of love grass. But he is trying to add a bit more to his pile. There we go. But, I mean, he managed to grab a single strand of grass with that huge trunk of his.
Crossing to Bushwalk.
So a big welcome to Terence Senior in Margate, who's been watching us for a while, and his son Terence Junior has been chatting to us on the drives in the last few days, and they're hoping to possibly come visit Djuma during our winter months of June, July. So glad you're with us, Terence Senior. He'd like to know why the elephant, bull and cow's head shapes are slightly different, and watch his watch. So the bull's head shape is slightly more rounded, it's a lot more large and robust, whereas the female's far more angular and sharp. And the main reason for this is due to the fighting, and they have big collisions, so it's for them to able them to take a lot bigger collisions than a female would. And obviously you want to be rounded when you're colliding with something, not sharpened, and that would cause it to break. But we're going to sit with this Ellie. He is now facing the right direction towards the Djuma waterhole. Hopefully he is on his way, and I did think I saw an Ellie or two further ahead of me. So whoever's watching the Juma Dam Cam, keep a lookout in case some Ellies come there to drink. While we sit here, let's go across to James, who's with a striped donkey.
Right, well, those zebra, everybody, have come up through this block. They've crossed this road. We're on a road called Philemon's Cut Line, which is where we began, just the other end of it here. And they've gone running off in here. They stopped, beautifully backlit by this golden sun. And then they took one look at Andrew Francis and they thought, we're not as fast as that. And they ran off into the bush as fast as they could. And I was hoping to try and get a last view of them. But I don't think that's going to happen. Unfortunately, that's why we're moving at such a speed. Anyway, let us slow down to a more sedate speed. This, of course, is I'm laughing because Andrew is now starting to sweat quite profusely. We're going to go back to the car and give him some water now, probably intravenously. This is a lilac-breasted roller feather, and you can see the beautiful purple, the black, the light blue, and the white. This one, of course, looks like it has been mangled by some sort of predator. Hopefully it just came out of the wing and was mangled by the wind. Not a particularly good specimen, that one. I have a better one. And that, of course, is for when they next contact us. For Susie and Mike, I think it is, used to be in Hawaii and now in Seattle. And they wanted a lilac-breasted roller feather, and in exchange we're going to send me some Hawaiian coffee, which will certainly help me get up at 03:45 in the mornings. So the sun is starting to dip now. It is a gorgeous afternoon, and it's just such fun to be walking along here. Andrew, there's a beautiful bird there. Andrew, come over here, if you don't mind. On the ground there, walking. See where the butterfly just jumped up? Just around there. This small bird, I think it's one of those cinnamon-breasted buntings. Can you see it?
No.
Not really. Okay, let's walk, just follow me. Donna Miller, while we're walking, stalking this bird, you say you love these walks because they are so intimate. They are the most intimate way to experience the wild, and I just love them too. Andrew, straight in front of me there. I can't even see what it is. You see it? It's now running under a bush. Of course, these binoculars are so cheap and nasty with the sun, looking into the sun. It's under that green bush there. That green bush. That's a brilliant description, isn't it? I mean, it really kind of singles out that bush from all the others around it. There, on the ground there. There, it's flown. Now, what I want to do, there are two species of birds that will nest underneath bushes like that. One of them is the cisticola, rattling cisticola, and I looked like it might have a nest there. And the other that I've yet to see the nest of is the cinnamon-breasted bunting. Which, you got bunting?
Okay, just go right now.
Okay, well done, you got the bunting. They apparently nest on the ground, and they're little finch-like birds, and why they'd be nesting on the ground, I just don't know. Seems like a very silly place to nest. Right, so let's go and look under this bush here. What they would do is build a little cup, sort of in an area like this, in which they would lay their little eggies. But I don't see any eggies here, I'm afraid. No. No, I'm no nest finder, unlike Scott Dyson, of course. Most of the birds on this reserve have had their nests photographed by him this season. Anyway, let's keep going along here. Lots of zebra tracks. Now, Cheryl in Indiana, this is wonderful news from you. You say that since watching Safari Live, you've become much more aware of squirrel alarm calls. I'm assuming you mean in Indiana. And when you look at them, you often spot a hawk around the place. That's great. I'm fascinated that the squirrels you have at home do make alarm calls. I suppose logically they would. So good. I hope that's helping your birding. There's still that fairly stiff breeze blowing out of the southeast. which is keeping the temperature nice and cool, well, but for Andrew, of course, but that's because we're using him as a pack mule as well as a technician this afternoon. You're quite hot, Andrew?
Yeah.
He says yes, he's very hot. We're going to feed him some water shortly. Andrew, there's an animal watching us. Rightful animal, look at it. You see it?
Uh-huh.
It is a wildebeest. And he will be fascinated by us. And they look so astonished. Life seems to take them by surprise on a consistent basis. And that wildebeest will look completely astonished as we walk towards him. He's unfortunately crossing the road. It would seem that not much wants to be around us today. Now, of course, if we were predators, this would be the worst possible angle to be walking from. The wind is coming from behind us, and we're walking into the light, which means our ability to see what's going on is compromised, and anything watching us coming towards us is going to see us very easily. Now, Val, you're in Ontario, of course, and it's pretty chilly out there, and you want to know what category or what order the wildebeest belong to. You want to know that you say they look like a cow but prance like a horse. They're certainly not related vaguely to horses. They're much more related to buffalo and then also to the antelope. But yeah, so they fall into, I think, a sub-tribe called the Bovidae, if I'm not mistaken, and so that would put them more closely related to the buffalo. Now, we've just seen a male wildebeest. We saw possibly his midden earlier along, so let's head across to Brent Leo-Smith. He's on quarantine clearings, and he's got possibly the offspring of that magnificent wildebeest bull that we've just seen. See you just now.
So from James chatting about wildebeest to the real deal. Yeah, is that a herd of wildebeest that has been staying on quarantine at the moment due to some nice short grass and the water being close by. And obviously, while the females have young babies, they need to maximize the amount of food and water they can get, since those babies are suckling and putting a little bit of extra strain on the moms. So we're trying to get to them. The baby wildies had a silly 5 minutes. They seem to have stopped. It's a bit warm now. Don't keep it going too long. But as I have said, they're weaned at around 8 months that they stop taking mom's milk. Oh, here come the herd. We could get a bit of a jog, so it might set the babies off in a playful mood again. Now, it's literally just behind those wildebeest is final control, behind that thicket of trees. So if Jerry happened to pop her head out the window, she would see this whole herd. But we like to keep our final control people in final control. Maybe we'll let her out later in the week to come visit the babies, wildies. So Carla from Holland is about to embark on a walking trail in Kruger. So they've done walks in Kruger before, but never a full trail. Which one do I think would be the best to do? Well, Carla, it depends what you want, of course. There you have walking trails and you have walking trails. So Kruger offers, I think, 2 different types of walking trails. One where you have to carry your tent and all your food with you and walk through the bush. The other is where they have a beautiful little camp out in the bush, and you stay in the camp and then you go on full walking safaris from there. So if you are going to do the full hardcore carry your own food and tent walking trails, I would do probably the Inyala Land Trail, which is up way in the north of the Kruger, around the Pafuri area, or the Olifants Trail. A really spectacular countryside. And if it is still quite dry, it's very good for elephants. You'll encounter lots of ellies and buffalo on the walks. And if you want to walk into big cats on foot, I would do the camp-based trail out of Sweni. I think those, for me, are the 3 best trails in Kruger. Oh, I think they're about to set off as they hit the open ground. Picking up speed. No, false start. Some of the adults are looking quite playful at the moment, so we might get a full adult and baby wildy run around. Well, Jim Butler on Twitter, he has a good explanation. Says wildebeest often hang out with other herbivores and they're more or less likely to do it with calves around. Well, as you can see to our right here, Jim, zebra, there's some impala behind them, so having calves doesn't really make a difference. What I think is about to happen is the wildebeest are storming off to the water. One is taken off ahead. They might be heading for a drink. I'm just going to stand by here and see if they do that. It'll be interesting to see if the buffalo are slightly more tolerant now than they were a while ago. The first baby wildebeest of the year that we saw couldn't have been 15 minutes old before we watched it get head-butted by a grumpy buffalo bull. And it looks like the one wildebeest who went for a drink has already been chased off by a buffalo. So there's the buffalo and the wildebeest, so there and there. And he went for a drink, and immediately the buffalo got up and wasn't going to drink and chased him off. So buffalo, like elephants, elephant bulls, can become very protective over water when it becomes scarce, and will try to defend it against other animals. Obviously, Pete's a bit of a bigger prospect to deal with than a wildebeest. But if I was the buffalo, I would definitely expel Pete for befouling the water so vilely, although the buffalo bulls and the ellies will all do the same. Hello, Tiger boys, look at he's got a snotty nose. Oh, look at the wildebeest running behind. A couple of them setting off, doing some bucks. I think they are going to come try a drink, so we're in the ideal spot now. Buffalo kicking up dust for us, and a little family of Haidila ibis also having a drink there. Not only are they having a drink, I think because their favorite food are earthworms, and there are not going to be many earthworms near the surface in this very dry climate, so there might be some worms on the edge of this water. Oh, Pete the pond hippo is standing up. A mouthful of mud. Maybe I think he might be heading to have a drink as well from that fresh water that was being pumped today. Of course, I don't know if Pete deserves the drink after the amount of feces he laid in a very short time in the pad. This could be. Look at that. Isn't that incredible? Almost nose to nose. Buffalo's deciding those hippo teeth are probably not worth tangling with. Now, wouldn't it be nice if some ellies came to join the party as well? Hope you guys are grabbing some screenshots. And oxpecker is also drinking. And you can hear the hardy-doll ibises making that very raucous call of theirs. So two little red-billed oxpeckers having a drink with Pete the hippo. Oh, and so one's still thirsty. Two still thirsty. William in Texas eating a vegetarian diet. William, I'm not sure whether you're eating the vegetarian diet or you're referring to the elephants. No, I'm only joking. I know you're referring to the elephants. Wondering where do they get their protein from? Well, William, their metabolism doesn't need protein. It needs cellulose. They're able to digest and get sugars and carbohydrates from plant matter, something that we and lions and leopards and quite a lot of the primates are unable to do. So they don't really need the same type of proteins that we do. And where do they get their calcium from? They will generally get their calcium from water. This particular area in particular has got a very high lime content in the water. And salts and minerals they will get from the soil. Quite often you will see them eating soil or from the water, depending on where you are. It's a thirsty hippo. And for such a big animal, it does drink quite daintily. It doesn't slurp or blurp. Just sips almost very elegantly. It is incredible how an animal that size is able to sip so elegantly. You would almost think he would slurp it down.
Good afternoon, mobile stations. Skunk on the clearing south of Bushwalk.
Only one there.
So Erin in New York says she's slightly confused. She says, are we pumping water for the wildlife? She thought we didn't try interfere. Erin, as much as we try interfere, unfortunately human beings can't help themselves sometimes. And as you can see behind this hippo there is a large dam, and that is a man-made thing. So the animal populations of this area are higher than they would have been traditionally, or the animals would have migrated more. But man-made dams made permanent water in areas where there wouldn't have been. Therefore, the animals have become accustomed to having this water here for the last 30 or 40 years. So if we were to suddenly stop providing water at these permanent points, we've only got two on Juma, which is a lot less than some other places. And it would be a little bit harsh on the animals. So at the end of the day, it is because we have fiddled that we have to continue fiddling, but we try to keep it to a bare minimum. And even a lot of mindsets have changed over the last while. So the Kruger Park is actually closing all its pumped water holes at the moment and only trying to keep the natural ones open. So all the seeps and rivers. And what this does is it forces the animals to move bigger distances between water and food, and that's actually good for the bush. It keeps the bush nice and open. It helps with growth regeneration. Where are you off to, Pete? And you can see he's not a very happy looking hippo. It got quite a limp.
No surprise. I'm approaching my boundary.
It looks like everyone's heading in for a drink now. All the buffalo have got up and started drinking. There's a herd of impala on their way. And the wildebeest possibly come down as well a little bit later. Now I think Pete's going to go find a shady spot to sleep in. So these tiny little, this side, there's a little bit of a tussle going on between the wildebeest. And look at all that dust that's being created. Or looks like a little bit of playing between some of the adults and last year's babies. Just to quickly come this side. Sorry, Tibbs, I know I'm throwing you left to right. But there is a possibility that these buffalo might not let the impala drink, so quite interesting to see what happens. And you can see the impala know that. They're a little bit more cautious approaching, but look at that beautiful late afternoon light on those impala. Isn't that spectacular? You can see they're even trying to drink out of the little puddles. And the first female makes a dash. And one wildebeest is snuck in behind us as well to get a drink. Oh, look at these impala go. Jumping to avoid the buffalo. They seem to think, oh, there's a spot next to the wildebeest. Maybe the buffalo won't bother us there. Next impala about to run into shot. There we go. There's a lot of impala slowly making their way here. Quick drinking out. Don't think they're quite finished yet. And they want to get to that fresh water that's being dominated by the buffalo bulls, the one that comes up from the pipe. Richard in the UK says, watching all the prey species all around us, one would think there should be a predator about, and would like to know when the last time a cheetah was seen on Djuma or Arathusa. I think it was probably 3 months ago, Richard. I haven't seen the cheetah since I followed those 2 male cheetah for almost 2 full safaris. And Richard is wondering where the other cats are, the leopards, the lions. It would be great to see a cat. Richard, I could not agree with you more. Unfortunately, I can tell you without a question in my mind, there is not a cat presently on Djuma. Karula is on a kill south of our boundary. Tingana is to the east of us. Shadow is to the south of Arathusa. Anderson is to the north of Arathusa. The Talamati Pride, who I have never seen, and the Kahuma Pride are both in Buffels Hook. The Styx Pride is to the south of us. The Mangen or Tsalala Breakaway Pride is way to the west of us. The Tsalala Pride is to the southwest of us. And the Shimungwe Pride, I have no idea. But unfortunately, they're not here at the moment. We're going through a bit of a kitty cat drought. I think this is day 4 or 5, Tibbs. So I'll try to remember when the last time we saw a leopard was. Let's go to James, who's with the feathered friend.
Right, everybody, there is a black flycatcher, one of only 3 black birds, 4 black birds that we get in the area. The other ones being the fork-tailed drongo, the square-tailed drongo, the black cuckoo shrike, and that, the black flycatcher. Actually very difficult to tell from a square-tailed drongo, and I wouldn't actually, to be honest, at this distance, with this level of binocular, the fork-tailed drongo has got kind of a reddish eye in the right light. But not a fork-tailed, square-tailed. So I'm pretty sure that that's a black flycatcher. And also, the black flycatcher, if you look very carefully, has got some small whiskers on either side of its beak. In fact, I might have that wrong. Let me just get the book out. We're back in the vehicle, driving to a different spot. So let's just have a quick look. I'll just have a quick look at the bird and the drongo. We are just moving to a new place to walk. This is not a new kind of a sort of Blair Witch game drive that we're doing. Andrew, why are you knocking about the place like that? Okay, so the black flycatcher, here we go, is that one there. And I think that's precisely what we were looking at. Very small whiskers, no red eye, completely black eye. And the square-tailed drongo, which is much more rare, has got longer whiskers and a very red eye. And we had it in very good sun, so I'm pretty sure that it was this one here, the black flycatcher. Very nice bird to see. Okay, let's head back across to Brent Leo Smith. We're going to try and find another good spot to walk in, and we'll see you shortly. Bye-bye.
So, some of the baby impala look to be having a silly 5 minutes. They've just stopped now. I was hoping, there's one going, prancing, jinking. And with most animals out in the wild, all this play is, whoa, look at that. Really important. Lovely camera work, Tibbs. It's really important practice for when the wild dogs are chasing you. Isn't this awesome? And you can see how agile they are, even at this young age. And the practice of this agility, as I said, very important practice for predators. Oh, one literally nearly ran into us, just for jinking off. So this is a similar game to what the baby wildebeests play quite often. A lovely big herd of impala. Well, not all the youngsters joining in the fun, it seems. They are such an exquisite animal, especially, I'm just going to fall a little bit, when we catch them in this beautiful golden light. Hello, Mum. To the start of one and run off for a run around. So we're just going to go have a quick check around quarantine. And see what's happening. But guys, I can hear a herd of elephants down in the Mawati. So if while I'm moving around quarantine, let me know if they come out towards the Djuma waterhole and I'll rush back. Just want to go have a quick look. You never know what else might be around. On Twitter says, isn't it ironic how the animals that foul the water the most, the buffalo and the hippo, hog it from the other animals? It is slightly. They are the biggest. Oh, hello, elephant. side. I heard some eddies. I think this is the same female who was drinking a little bit earlier. We're not going to stay with her just now. When she feeds, we're going to move along, do a quick loop of quarantine, but we know where the eddies are. And I'm hoping for a miracle cat. Just drive out to quarantine, and there's this unknown monster male lion in a sphinx-like pose. I'm now grasping at straws, obviously, because the chances of that happening are as likely as James Henry beating me in a running race. It seems James can't even find an impala today, but we'll let him be for a while. And I will admit it has been quite wonderful spending the festive season and the skeleton crew guiding with James. We've known each other for many, many years. And it sounds like James has accepted my race challenge. This could get interesting. He always accuses me of being really highly competitive. And this is my one way of drawing out that equally highly competitive streak he has. He just hides it better. Oh, Geraldine's now getting involved, says perhaps we should do it tomorrow evening at the end of drive as a New Year's Eve present for all the viewers. Have to see about that, Geraldine. Because officially I'm already on holiday then. I will be here, but after tomorrow's sunrise safari, Andrew, Francis and I will be lounging in the pool till we depart on the 1st of January. So we've seen that nice big group of buffalo bulls down at the Juma Dam Cam and the waterhole there. And Randall in Illinois is wondering when do they mate or breed? Well, buffaloes breed throughout the year. Those particular gentlemen we've been seeing around the waterhole are retired from mating. They are beyond their prime. They are probably between 10 and 15 years old and have been pushed out of the breeding herds by younger, more virile males, more aggressive and in better condition. So when they become old like that, they move to places where it's easy to find water and food, and that's what these guys have done there. Randall would also like to know what a buffalo's gestation period is. So with most of the bigger animals, it is a little bit longer than, say, the smallest. It's around, depending, from about 330 to 346 days, so nearly a year. About 11 months. I've got a question for all of you out there. What animal in the African bush, one we have seen today, has the longest gestation period of all the mammals in the bush? And remember to send your answers through via email to questions@wildearth.tv or use the hashtag SafariLIVE on Twitter. temperature is quite nice as the sun dips. So while we continue to check around here, let's go back across to James, who is using the bushwalk as a training exercise for our eventual race.
Oh, yeah, just warming my old bones up, of course, to try and I've accepted Brent Leo Smith's challenge, of course, of the 40-meter dash tomorrow. I'm hoping desperately, of course, that his hip pops out during the course of the race. Firstly, so that he will writhe about the floor in pain, and secondly, so that I can win, of course. Now, I'm not convinced that I can beat Brent, and there was a stage when I was a little bit faster than him on the, well, not so much off the mark, but over a lengthy stretch. But he does have very long legs, and my legs are inescapably short. Yes, that's all there is of them, really. I mean, you can get full frame. You don't even need the, you need the sort of, you can super zoom in full frame.
I did zoom a bit, yeah.
You did zoom a bit. And Leo Smith says the only way I'm going to beat him is if his hip pops out. I might help it pop out with my stick. This used to be a giant land snail, of course. Well, not necessarily, of course, but this is the shell of the giant land snail. And I suspect it looks like it's been eaten, and there are a few things that will eat one of these, but most importantly, what will gnaw on a shell like this is a tortoise, because they need the calcium. And actually, the snail itself would be eaten by a Speke's hinged tortoise. They look very sweet, but they're actually fairly voracious eaters of things like snails. And so that's what I think's the fate that befell this giant land snail. Now, normally this time of year, of course, we talk a lot about the weather and the drought and that sort of thing. Normally around this time of the year, we would be seeing many more giant land snails. Careful, Andrew, you hooked that strychnos bush with your wire. Watch out. We would be seeing a lot more in the way of giant land snails, and that's simply because there's rain around and they like the moisture. They feed on rotting plant material, and of course plant material doesn't rot in the absence of any kind of moisture. And so no land snails around. And I think while it might be, I don't want to say traumatic, but it might be quite sort of difficult to watch as the dryness continues over the next little while. I think what you'll find is that we're going to have a very interesting time of it. It's going to be fascinating to watch which creatures survive and which don't, which animal. There'll be a total change in the suite of species, and I, for one, have never experienced a true drought in this area. I've had a couple of sort of dryish years, but a proper drought I haven't experienced, and whether that's what this is going to be or not, I'm not sure. But certainly it's going to be interesting, and you're going to notice, especially when we get the drone back in the sky, which will hopefully be in sometime early January. When are you back, Andrew? Andrew's going on leave tomorrow, so he's coming back in mid-January. We'll probably start flying the drone again then. You'll be astounded by how brown everything looks. It looks pretty green around us now. That's just the trees. That's just the summer leaves on the trees. But as soon as you start looking towards the ground, you can see how brown the ground is. And when you look at it from the air, it looks a little bit like the Gobi Desert. I've never actually seen the Gobi Desert, so I'm not sure if that's actually true. Anyway, it will be fascinating to see. Susan, you asked a question that for once is actually pretty easy to ask. You're in Brooklyn, and you want to know what the longest lived mammal in the park is. The longest lived mammal would be an elephant, definitely, or other than a human being, of course, and they live in this area probably 55 to 60 years, maybe 65 years in a good lifetime. And then the longest living animal is probably a leopard tortoise, which I believe can live for over 100 years. Look at what we have here. I'm trying to interpret what on earth is going on here.
Maybe a tree was in there.
There was a tree here, yes, there's no question. You can see where the rootstock came. I actually suspect quite strongly it's this tree. Andrew, does this hole looks quite perfectly round to me?
Yeah.
Doesn't it to you? Do you think it might be human-made? Especially as there seems to be, oh, you know what it could have been? There is fire here, definitely a fire that came through here. Maybe this is a giant rootstock that caught fire and sort of simmered and burned like a coal under the ground here and eventually left this hole. Now, that is entirely possible because a lot of these combretum trees, like this one over here, will have enormous rootstocks because every time they get broken by the elephants, the rootstock gets slightly larger and slightly larger and slightly larger. And I suspect that's precisely what's happened here. Eventually the soil was replaced entirely by this woody rootstock that would have caught fire and just sort of eventually slowly, very slowly burned away. Probably over the course of weeks it would have stayed alight. So that's what I think happened here. Alternatively, somebody came here with a spade and dug it out, but I think that's unlikely. Right, on we go. And this wind, of course, will be doing nothing to improve the general moisture levels of the area. Wind is a very drying force. Check this out. Look at that, everybody. Now, Carla, you're in the Netherlands, and we're just looking at a place where an elephant, I think, has come and rubbed mud off, and I always try and see if we can't find a tick or two, because that's why they rub themselves in mud, cover themselves in mud, and it helps them to get rid of the parasites on their bodies. And sometimes you can find ticks embedded in the tree here or in the mud. Carla, you're in the Netherlands, and thank you for your very kind comments on our little safaris, our walking and driving safaris. You say that for those of you who are not going to come to Africa, I hope that isn't the case. I hope that you will maybe one day come, but for those who aren't perhaps planning to come, this is the next best thing. Well, I'm so glad. Let me assure you, though, being on foot out here is really, you can't replace it. But I do hope that you will be able to come out at some stage. If not, keep watching and keep talking to us, because we really do appreciate the time that you take to watch us as much as you appreciate us walking around here. Because it's because of you, obviously, that we can live like we do. Walking through the bush, this is my job, everyone. Some people sit at a desk, staring at a computer screen, reading complex legal documents. Andrew and I are walking through combretum woodland as the African sun sets at our backs. And while we are not seeing anything particularly exciting, it just feels incredible. As Geraldine says, some people have to sit in the final control, stare at the computer screen and watch us do our jobs. Geraldine, we appreciate your work too, I promise. Rose, you're in Harrisburg, and yes, oh, look at this, Andrew, it's a tiny little flower. Rose, we can do exactly as you say. You say, can you use wildebeest dung and elephant dung as fertilizer? Absolutely you can, Rose. That's a very good thing to use for fertilizer. And certainly, one of the major things that helps the grass grow out here is the herds of buffalo that walk through, and the dung that they drop on the ground helps the seeds to sort of grow up into beautiful grass plants. So absolutely, the dung plays a huge and very important part in the ecology of this area. Look at this beautiful flower. It's sort of a semi-succulent, and I say that because the stem is clearly not sort of without sort of succulence, if you like. It's carrying quite a lot of water. It's quite thick and fleshy, as are the leaves. And beautiful yellow flowers, covered in ants. That's fascinating. They're probably taking the nectar. Ants are probably stealing the nectar. Do you want me to try and hold on a bit more still, Andrew?
No, it's good.
There you go. The wind is blowing. Isn't that amazing? This little flower, everybody, you probably can't tell, but is about a centimetre across, which is less than half an inch across. 10 millimetres, if that, probably 8. Isn't that beautiful? Just spectacular. I don't know if you can hear the wind blowing around us. It's almost a sort of coastal wind. Feels bizarre to have a wind in summer in the lowveld without clouds building and a front coming through. Beautiful. Andrew, have we had enough of this flower, or should we keep for more?
I'm quite liking it.
You're quite liking it, okay, well that's good.
What are the ants getting? The pollen?
I think they're probably eating the pollen or the nectar. There'll be some nectar inside there. And I think that's what they're going for. So ants are a massively varied group of insects, of course. They belong to the order Hymenoptera, which is the same order that the wasps and bees belong to. And they are, some of them are carnivorous, some of them are entirely herbivorous, some of them milk various bits and pieces. By milk I mean they milk things like scale insects for, is it scale insects? It is, it's scale insects for a sort of sap, special sap. They really are incredibly varied. We watched some today attacking a termite nest and carrying off some hapless worker termites that failed to get into the mound quick enough before they plugged the hole. It was an amazing thing to see. And you can see that video on our Facebook page, actually, SafariLIVE on Facebook, and the video of those ants carrying away the termites is there. So it goes with modern technology. And hello Heidi on Twitty. Heidi, you want to know about the land snails and how large they get. Giant land snails, Heidi, probably get to about that size at their maximum. And apparently they live for 10 years or so. That's quite a long-lived snail. How many inches is that, Andrew? It's probably about 12 centimetres, so just shy of 6 inches, so probably about 5 to 6 inches. And you can eat them, Heidi, if you're desperate and very hungry and you have a lot of garlic and perhaps some butter, some peri-peri and various other things. You can eat them. I wouldn't recommend it. I suspect it would be like eating some fairly gritty snot. And Jim Butler, you say you've been charged by a complex legal document and I don't understand the danger. You're absolutely right, I don't, Jim. Jim, I have tried to read things as simple as leases for homes in which I've stayed, and by the time I fell asleep for the 4th time on page 1, I decided that it was not for me, and so my sister very kindly went and did law, and now I just give them to her. That's definitely the way to do it. My brother is an accountant, my sister is a lawyer, my mother is a tax consultant, and that leaves me to basically play about in the bush without being arrested for being a total incompetent in society. All right, let's head back to Brent Leo Smith. I think you're right there, Andrew. I don't know what Brent's doing. I think he's knocking about. He's probably having to sort of massage his little hippie before the race tomorrow. And I just wanted to say before this race, of course, that look, I would sorely like to beat him, mainly because if I don't, we're all going to hear about it for the next 40 years or so. My ego will be bruised if I lose, but you know, the thought of losing is spurring me to great heights. And so let's see what happens tomorrow. Let's go across to Brent and we'll see you shortly.
We've just caught up with a nice little breeding herd. There's a little cheeky boy shaking his head at us. Quite a big group of elephants. There's two little boys having a bit of a pushing and shoving match. Well done to Cassie and Beth and Joel, who got that quiz right. The longest gestation period is, oh look, he's having a jump on him. Let's go forward a bit. Is the African elephant. It has a gestation period of 22 months. What are you two troubles up to? Oh, we can see the pink of the tongue as he opens his mouth and he sniffs us. Well, a very lovely message from Karen, our Zimbo living in London, who wishes Andrew and myself safe travels, tight lines, and most importantly, many cold Zambezi beverages. And thanks very much, Karen. I know you're feeling a bit homesick at the moment. Hopefully the live safaris can bring you a little bit closer to home till you can next visit. So, Tibbs and I are going to throw caution to the wind since we have not moved more than about 600 meters the whole evening safari. It's been very busy around Juma with Ellies and buffalo and wildies and impala. So we have decided we are going to venture forth out of this area and make our way towards Bushwalk at a bit of a hit and hope that there's possibly something feline or canine in that area. In Tucson, Arizona. It's just mentioned that I was talking about Kruger closing its water holes, and she'd like to know how will this affect the seasonal tourist industry and the income that provides for the park. It won't at all. If anything, it will help the seasonal tourist industry. So a lot of these pumped water holes are very far from any of the tourist roads in areas of the park that are closed to the public. So the original thinking behind this from the early 50s through to the 60s, 70s was to create as much water as possible that would create more animals. This was incorrect. What it did do is inadvertently almost completely wiped out the sable, roan and brown hyena populations of the park. So those areas where there was no permanent water were seasonally utilized by animals like specifically buffalo, elephant, wildebeest, zebra. And when it was rained and there was lots of ground and surface water from the rains, those animals would move into these areas. So they would only be there for a few months of the year. Once the groundwater dried up, those animals would then move back to the permanent water, seeps, rivers, etc. And that gave these areas time to recover. And also meant that a lot of the animals weren't permanently based in these areas. So when it comes to animals like sable and roan, they are such specific feeders. I mean, in the Kruger, nearly 80% of sable antelope's diet consists of one species of Eragrostis grass. And what happens is now, with masses of buffalo and zebra that would have traditionally or historically moved into that area and then migrated out, now because there's permanent water, they don't have to move out. So they stay there permanently. And they wiped out the grazing for animals like roan and sable. They're very specific feeders. And with the hyenas, the brown hyenas, so spotted hyenas are far more water dependent. So they would be far more concentrated on the areas of permanent water. But now with pump pans, the hyena clans actually spread their territories and became very dominant in areas where they weren't before. And where they weren't, the brown hyenas filled that niche. And through most of the brown hyenas range in this area, it has been completely wiped out by large numbers of spotted hyenas in particular, and lions. So it's obviously an ongoing and learning process. We didn't know nearly as much about how the ecosystem worked back then as we do now. So it is a very bold and a very correct move by the National Parks Organisation in South Africa to close those waterholes. Us in the Sabi Sands are definitely seeing an effect. This is private land, so it's a little bit more, it's a little bit different. And these huge groups of buffalo bulls, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, at Buffalo's Hook Dam earlier this year, I saw a group of about 60 buffalo bulls. I nearly fell over. And that is probably more than likely from the closure of those western waterholes on the boundary of Kruger. And it's causing a lot of animals to now move into the Sabi Sands, particularly buffalo. The zebra populations increased, and the elephant populations increased. That's why when you see ellie herds, I generally tend to stay a little bit further away until I can judge their behavior. I'm definitely seeing a noted trend with some of the bulls. And I think they're moving in from that western area of Kruger and from areas that are not accessible to the public, so there are no vehicles in that. And you can see they're a little bit more nervous. They're not so sure. And it's possibly because they haven't been exposed to vehicles as much as the elephants that were generally around here earlier. So it's very interesting. It's a very interesting time to see what happens in that area with these different land management decisions happening in the Kruger. Our gander at Buffalo's Hook is looking a little bleak, but still worth the gander. I think Teb's now starting to get cabin fever around the quarantine in Vuyatela. Another lovely comment and question from Carla in Holland, who's planning a walking safari in Kruger. And Carla says, thanks very much to the whole WildEarth SafariLIVE team for letting her come along on our amazing game drives and bushwalks. For those who are unable to visit Africa regularly, it's the next best thing. She also asks, and I know she asked James the same question, do we have most amazing or fantastic sightings for the year? I've been very lucky. I've had a few really incredible sightings. Let me think. And probably 4 that really stand out. One was with my favorite young male leopard, who I unfortunately have not seen in quite a while. One of Karula's sons, by the name of Kunyuma, or Mr. Snarly Face. He's got an incredibly different character to a lot of leopards you see. and I enjoyed an immense amount of time in my early days here at Djuma in March and April. I think my favorite sighting, this is also the first leopard I walked on foot here. Tracked him, found him. Sorry, my seat is disappearing. Yeah, and that sighting, he killed a bushbuck, and we found him with the kill in the small drainage system. And we spent sort of 3 days with him, and he did two particularly amazing things during that time. The one was he was thirsty after feeding off his bushbuck and meandered towards Chele Pad, which had water in it then, and there was some buffalo bulls lying in the pan, and for no reason apparently, and I've never seen or never heard of another leopard doing this, he snuck up on the buffalo bull and went whack on its bottom, and then jumped up a small ebony tree there, and the buffalo obviously was quite upset and tried to get him out of the tree with his horns, and he sort of stood in the tree just above the buffalo and went and hissed at him. And then the next morning actually was another amazing sighting. He climbed right into the tip-top branches of a dead leadwood tree and nearly fell when the branches started breaking, so he scrambled down to safety. I think from a leopard point of view, and then actually one of the four that also stands out is also another leopard, his brother, Quarantine, and I was with Andrew on camera. The Kunuma sightings were with Brian, and what happened was we were following Quarantine, hunting through some bush very similar like this, and he took off like Superman into mid-air, and he swatted a guinea fowl out of mid-air. Unfortunately for him, he didn't swat it hard enough, because as the guinea fowl sort of bounced like a basketball off the ground and kept going. But it was incredible. He must have gone 15 feet in the air and 20 feet vertically. Oh no, parallel to there. So it was incredible. And then possibly another two of those. It's so difficult to discern between them. We'll keep it in chronological order as I've been going in so far. The next was the Nkahuma Pride, taking down a buffalo bull live, and we were able to witness the whole hunt, the whole build-up. It was 5 days of waiting for these lions. They were hungry. I knew they were going to do something. And Andrew was with me on camera, and eventually we caught I think from start to finish, the first live buffalo kill ever. So that was absolutely incredible. And the next and last is the wild dogs and elephant at the Treehouse Waterhole. We spent 45 minutes of absolute pandemonium with wild dogs being chased by elephant all over the place. My favorite animal, and an incredible sighting. Screaming, roaring elephants, wild dogs just keeping out of harm's way. So those definitely are my four most memorable sightings of the year. And, well, we continue to peruse the untraveled areas of eastern Djuma, and the sun's starting to set. Let's go across to James and see what he's up to.
Well, this probably, everybody, is one of my most epic sightings of the year. We're watching the sun go down from the boughs of a marula tree. I am probably 15 meters off the ground. That multiplied by 3 and a bit is about 50 feet off the ground. I have to tell you, I'm terrified because I don't have a whole lot to hold on to, but the view of the sun going down there over the mountains is too spectacular for words. And so I'm just going to hold my thumbs and hope that the tree lasts as long as the sunset does. Isn't that just beautiful? Andrew and I decided that we were going to try and find a tree from which we could watch the sun go down together, because we're obviously very high up, and now the wind is blowing, of course, which makes my toes curl. So we'll just watch the sun go down there. I'm hoping that it'll be down faster than it normally is, so that I can get out of this tree. But it is just such a special thing to sit here especially when the wind isn't blowing, and watch the last dying embers of the day. And if we were sitting on the ground now, the sun would already be down. And you can see it just peeping down over the Drakensberg. That's as far south as it will go, of course. From now on, it will start to move slowly and inexorably north. That's to the right-hand side of your screen. Every day it will rise, at least set slightly further to the right-hand side of your screen. And the final control, of course, has now got a view of the sunset. I think that's Jerry feeling bitter that she has to watch it, look at it all through a computer. Never mind, she does live in one of the most beautiful places in the world. Isn't that spectacular, everybody? There, the last ember of the day going down. And there it goes. Look at the way this beautiful silver clouds shining sort of silvery gold just above where the sun set over the Drakensberg. There's 3 or 4 little knolls in front, inside the reserve, some of them outside. All right, before this tree gives up the spook and breaks and has me plummeting to the floor, let's go across to Brent Leo Smith. I'm not really concerned whether he's ready for a link or not. I think it's time to go across to him, and Andrew and I will attempt to get out of this rather high and precarious position in one piece. Well, not in one piece, in 2 pieces. One.
A group of Dagger boys, or maybe a large breeding head of buffalo, has snuck onto the property. One just didn't look quite like an old boy. It could be just, that is a Dagger boy. Let's have a look. I think it says a breeding herd of buffalo. Isn't that pleasant? There we go. Definitely see the difference in the horns from a male and female. We've been looking at those big Dagger boys around the Djuma Dam, and then that female, you see how the boss is not nearly as pronounced in a breeding herd. I'm just going to edge forward a little. It doesn't look like the biggest breeding herd in the world. Difficult to say. We could be right on the periphery, and they could stretch all the way to the boundary. Hello, buffaloes. Bring us some lions tomorrow morning, please. Pretty please. So these buffalo are going to be heading, there's an open patch behind me, I'm quite certain, horn in the bottom. They're going to be heading towards a more open area, possibly even on the eastern boundary, where they're going to be lying up for the evening and chewing the cud. Brrr. I love all the strange noises that come out of herds of buffalo. And it's very strange. I mean, we're sitting here in December, about to go into January, and normally we would be inundated with emerald green. It's almost like we're going back into the start of winter. And the one positive about that drought is it makes finding the big cats a lot easier. It makes tracking this nice dry sandy soil quite a bit easier, and also these big herds of buffalo start losing a little bit of condition, making it a little bit easier for the lions, because a buffalo can be a formidable beast to bring down when it's in fine fettle. Hello, flows. So this is what you really want. You want these big herds like this, moving between water and grazing. So their hoof action actually gets the seeds into the soil, and they're also mobile fertilizer machines. And not like those buffalo bulls that are very, very stationary, and they stay around pans and dry riverbeds where there's easy access to water and food. big herd of buffalo has to be constantly on the move. So it's constantly fertilizing, constantly using that hoof action to help embed grass seeds, as well as keeping the grass short for other species. And they're bulk grazers, so they just munch through. A species like wildebeest, who's a very picky grazer, and they'll have a much easier time getting a meal after big herds of buffalo, if you've got a lot of big herds of buffalo around. All the funny noises that come out of buffalo herd. Because it doesn't look like the biggest herd. Tabs, you're a bit higher than me. How far does it see how they go? Do they stretch all the way through? So very difficult to see how many there are right on the edge of this thicket here. So it doesn't... So I don't think it's a particularly large herd. And that's from the sound. If I take my earpiece out for a second and I just listen. So on a really big herd of buffalo, you would almost constantly be hearing that sort of brr, brr, and arguments between them, sort of grunts, bellows and roars, and that knocking of bosses. Sounds like a smallish herd, probably between 50 and, or maybe more than 50, but probably close to 100, so not a very big herd. Let's hope they bring some lions with them. And when the buffalo herds are lacking a little bit of condition, and it is quite dry, they become firm favorites of the lions, and they spend a lot of time trailing these herds. Excuse me. So, on that note, let's go look where these buffaloes come from. At this slight chance, there might be Africa's dominant predator following them. And they have come from an area. If they've come from the south of us, that's where the Birminghams have been hanging out. See on different wildlife out here the phlegm grimmets, and that is the animals taking urine, the scent of urine, and over their Jacobson's organ, and they often lift their lips to do it. And Joanne on Lake Michigan is wondering, do humans have the phlegm or the Jacobson's organ? And if so, where is it? We do. It is completely redundant in us. It has been redundant for a couple of 100,000 years. And if you go, there's that small little hole on the top of your palate, and your Jacobson's organ is located just above there. But it is completely redundant with the development of language. It became a bit null and void. Probably a good thing. Imagine safely going around to smell where a girl had peed when you're trying to see if she's interested in you. Or you never know, we have some strange people in this world. They might think that might be quite exciting. So there's some buffalo bulls on the edge of this breeding herd. We're going to saunter on past them. You're a bit behind, gentlemen. Ren, who's 15 in Ohio, says, well, you've had a puff adder and a blind snake that you've caught, but you still haven't got the cobra. That's pretty cool. Ren, so we've caught a blind snake, a puff adder, and, well, the blind snake was the Schlieblen's blind burrowing snake, a very pretty fat snake. And then I caught the puff adder, we released that, and we also rescued a little black-headed centipede eater from the swimming pool. But yes, the cobra still eludes me. I will hopefully win that battle when I manage to grab it when it's out of the roof. So, in Ohio, Rain, you probably have possums in your roof. I have spitting cobras. And now this is quite interesting. It looks like another section of this herd. So it looks like this big breeding herd might have been split into two, or has been traveling together and is now split, or they could actually be all the way along Cheetah Cut Line. But nevertheless, big herds of buffalo around are good because they bring lions, and I'm in desperate need of seeing a cat. And where they are here in this very spot, where those very buffalo are standing, is where the Nkuhuma Pride killed that buffalo bull. And it's actually quite, wouldn't it be quite amazing if while we're sitting in the exact same spot, the exact same thing happened? So there is the skull of the Nkuhuma kill, and there's a little patch of buffalo. So again, looks to be a small group, over 50 but less than 100. And just zoom in, right, that one there. There's that Fleming grimace. Oh, just stopped, unfortunately, that we were just talking about. So we went looking for lions behind the buffalo, and we found more buffalo.
Giving mobile after further.
Safari Dean is wondering, do I think lions would prefer a smaller herd of buffalo like this one to a big herd? Not necessarily. The reason they like the big herds is there's generally more sub-adults and babies, and they're a little bit easier to deal with than adults. But I think just generally lions like buffalo, even if it's an old cantankerous Duggar boy by himself or in a group like the ones at the Duma Waterhole. Also, so you have to be very careful when walking buffalo bulls on foot, but buffalo herds are completely different kettle of fish, and you can actually get very close to them on foot and sit down, and they actually walk right past you. It is an incredible experience, and just to listen to all the sounds they make. So we've only got a few minutes left of the safari, and we're going to throw one last roll of the die and head to where these buffalo come from, and hopefully we see a Birmingham or 5 trotting on the tracks of these buffalo. If that's the case, we won't be going home anytime soon. It just took off. There was a little Wahlberg's eagle. Surprised, normally by this time of the evening they are closer to their nests, and I don't know of a Wahlberg's nest in this area, and they do nest in the same place year after year. So for the last, we're just going to go across quickly to James, who's mentally prepping himself for our race so he can say goodbye from Bushwalk.
I'm not only mentally preparing myself for the race, I'm physically preparing myself for the race. You saw me stretching a little bit earlier. I'm hoping to do it at the end of the drive, of course, because my aging bones will need to be very loose by the time the actual race takes place. I suggest we do it I'm going to suggest we do it over sort of 5 kilometers, but I think it'll probably be more like 50 meters. It's going to be a hell of a day. Okay, that's all we have from you today. I'm a little bit out of breath still after climbing out of that tree. I have to say I was terrified out of my wits, mainly because the branch I was sitting on felt like it was going to crack and plummet me to the ground at any stage. Thank you, Andrew, for your bravery this afternoon and your exceptional work in the trees on the camera. That's Andrew's thumb. He is going on leave tomorrow after drive. I think is it tomorrow after drive, Andrew?
Yes.
Yes, he will be enjoying the New Year's Eve. Big thank you to Brent, of course, who carried most of the drive today with Tibbs, and Geraldine, who's flying solo today in the final control, not the flying control. That's a different thing entirely. And thank you mostly to all of you for the time that you give us as we walk through the wilderness, and thank you for joining us on our little expeditions. Hand you back to Brent. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 0500. See you then, and bye-bye.
Okay, so we're back and we've got where the buffalo were coming from, this general direction. So I'm hoping to find some Birminghams on their tail. We've got a few minutes left, so we won't give up. We'll search to the last second. But I'll definitely be, for my last drive, heading up towards this boundary with fingers crossed that the lions have decided to come in following these buffalo. But it doesn't look like it so far. And the cats continue to evade us. This is drive number 6, heaven forbid, without a cat. And I'm 100% positive we don't have any cats on our properties at the moment. But tomorrow morning, a new day, fresh. Hopefully there'll be a plethora of tracks everywhere. Everywhere we look, there's going to be lions and leopards. I hope, at least, for my last drive for a while. And the last question from Monique in London. Monique is wondering, would the buffaloes be disturbed by that skull and acknowledge it like elephants would? Well, no, not at all, Monique, and I'm afraid elephants don't do it either. Unfortunately, a lot of documentaries and stuff like to portray elephants doing that. Elephants are curious. They will pick up a buffalo bone as readily as they'll pick up another elephant's bone. It's just the narration that often leads you to believe certain things. And I personally don't, and I've spent the majority of my life with elephants, but everyone is entitled to their opinion. We're quite far from home, so we're going to keep moving that way. It's been great having you on the Sunset Safari, and I know James is quivering in his boots at the thought of having to race me, and my long legs, his little ones trying to keep up. But good night, and we'll see you on the Sunrise Safari bright and early tomorrow.